Welcome to Rhode Island Time Capsule. I'm Mark Kenny, and this is my colleague Steve Stone. And today we're talking with Mr. Paul Murphy. Paul is the chairman of the Butts Hill Fort Restoration Committee. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Steve, for having me back over. That's great.
Absolutely. So before we talk about the fort, I just wanted to mention two prior episodes. Episode 105, which is also with Paul, and episode 106, which was with Gloria Schmidt. Gloria is another outstanding Portsmouth historian and an author. Those two episodes provide an excellent background of the American Revolution, the Battle of Rhode Island, and sort of what was happening in 1778, setting the scenario for today's discussion. I also want to mention Gloria's outstanding Portsmouth History Notes website, which is just packed with information about Portsmouth history.
All right. Paul, could you please give us an update about the Butts Hill Fort Committee?
Sure. We're alive and well. We've been at the Butts Hill Fort Committee has been around since 2021. We're a collection of local folks, including Gloria Schmidt. I did bring some slides. There's a picture of the team with Gloria prominently in the middle there. Gloria Schmidt. We're 100% volunteer, dedicated to just clearing out the fort. That's what we've been after. Gloria mentioned how we got set up from the Portsmouth Historic Society and how we do have a 501c that's Battle of Rhode Island, but this is the core team that actually has been at the fort, running clearings, cleanups, planning and doing all that good stuff. So the main team, we always have, there's been hundreds of people, yourself included, I know, Steve, who are out there helping. But day-to-day core, whether it's Gloria and Richard, her wonderful husband, who does treasury, our treasurer, Jonathan Spencer, who does some of the admin, or the guys that are just out like chopping trees and doing stuff and taking care of the place, and bringing the ball downfield. You see Chris Rhode, Steve Schinkel. There's a whole bunch of folks on the. You recognize Jim Garman, who's also a committee member. Craig Clark. President of the Portsmouth Historical Society, Jim Stearns, our PA, and then Pat Keys, myself, and Eric Whipple, who's our tree specialist and guru. So, and there's more. There's Seth Charo, you see Arthur Severa there in a British uniform. Nate Manise, who was an Eagle Scout, who actually started the whole thing before there was a Butts Hill Fort Committee by being an Eagle Scout project to take what used to be the stone marker that was out in the woods vandalized and brought that back with the help of DPW and raising money and all that as an Eagle Scout project.
Wow.
So it's a great squad. We just have fun. We go forth. You can see there with the lower right where John is in the tent. We have a sign-in tent. If you come out on a clearing day, we'll have you sign a town waiver, and after that, we just go and do goodness. So that's us. More about that to follow, but that's our committee, and we've been active for about 4 years, and we'll just keep going until we're done.
Nice. Very good. Could you explain the strategic importance of Butts Hill Fort?
I can. We talked quite a bit last time about the fort itself, but on this next slide, well, just to refresh, this is the Christian McBurney, the historian's map of the battle, which is superimposed on modern Google map, which shows you the Route 24, the Bristol, onto the Bristol Bridge. Howland's Ferry is that area down here, Fogland side. That was the strategic ferry that basically drove the entire battle. So that ferry route and that line of communication and the other one were vitally important throughout the war, but also especially to the British, who only had the island throughout the entire war. This map that shows troops and movements and all that stuff, that's really the battle that 1 month in August of 1778. For 3 years, between December 76 and October 79, the British only have Aquidneck Island, so they want the top of the hill fortified, and they want overlook on the ferries, which also have their own lower encampments, and Common Fence Point. So it's the high ground on the top end of the island. That's why it's strategically important. Plus, it guards on the lines of communication. So no matter who has the island at the time, it's the most critical point, other than Newport itself. One could argue. I do have another slide. This is a blow-up of inside of Christian McBurney's map, slide 3, which but what it has on it is to the right. You can see is the casualty figures. It's a very big engagement. There's 16,000 total troops, and that doesn't even include the naval forces offshore, which is another 5,000 on either side between the ships and the Marines, and who don't actually land and take part in the battle, but. For example, the British lose, 261 casualties. The Americans about half that, 461 total. That, just in reference, Bunker Hill, the British lose about 1,100, troops. There's more troops actually engaged on Aquidneck Island in this fight than there is at Bunker Hill. It's just that that was much more horrendous because there was a full frontal assault ×3 and, you know, way more carnage. They could have done it here, but again, this is 3 years after that battle, and all these troops have been down south fighting. So you can see the names on there. You get Sullivan, Glover, who rescued the entire army and saved the war. It has the American left, our own General Greene, for the first and only time who commands troops in Rhode Island that we know of at major engagement, is here in Portsmouth, commanding troops up at you know, Butts Hill Fort. He has the right side of the line, and Sullivan's in overall command. So very strategic, a very important battle. It's the last time there's a major engagement in the north. When the Americans leave after the battle, the fort returns to British hands for another year until they elect to leave. So they leave in '79. The French get here in the following in 1780. So, which we'll talk about in a second. But on the next slide. This is actually a 1778 map made by the French. It was made by, I know you're interested in Lafayette,
Yep.
Steve. So our friend Lafayette had one of his aides made a map of the area, which shows what's there at the time of, basically at the time of the battle. So if you look at the middle of this map, there's 2 installations there, which is what the British had, and it's what the French aren't here yet, but he's basically reporting this as a map back to Lafayette and the King, just to have here's what happened during the battle, and here's where our troops, if they get there, are going to be stationed at. So you can see from the period map, it is definitely 2 installations. We know that. It matches all the descriptions of the battles and the wars and that kind of stuff. This slide 5 is actually the progression. I find probably most interesting. It might be a little bit too action-packed, but this slide, if you go left to right, this shows a British depiction in 1778 of the 2 installations. You know, you can see this little bow tie looking thing with a barracks in it. Up here is a gun battery and a magazine. So there's 2 installations on top of Butts Hill when the British have it. And we know that because to the right is a British plan that they actually drew that is the plan for the fort. So down here is a barracks, up here is a magazine and another barracks, and that's a gun battery. And it's exactly where you would expect it to be today. The next depiction over is the French, because when the French get here, they go to the top of the hill in 1780. Rochambeau wants the top of Aquidneck Island fortified. So Lafayette himself comes up on a staff ride with the engineers and says, we want to make these 2 forts into one proper fort. And this is the design plan for what they did. It's from a period map. So basically all of these were drawn 250 years ago. This last one is just superimposed. I put the British plan on, basically this is ground penetrating radar of what we have today. So you can actually see the overlay. We know where the fort was. We know how it ended up. We know where the barracks was. We do have a great archaeological effort that we've done doing non-penetrating activities to try to find out more about, is there anything left of the barracks, where the barracks was, that kind of thing. Because it all kind of got torn down after the war, but we know where things were. What's definitely there is still the 1778, the Revolutionary War earthworks that were left by the French. Before I get off the slide, though, there's a floor plan up to the left, the top left. It's kind of small, but we have the floor plan that they drew of this 200-man barracks, or 300-man if you double-deck enlisted troops, with officers' quarters on both ends. This is kind of an artist depiction if you make that in 3D, just a pencil sketch of what that probably looked like, and it survives. Even when the British bug out and come back, they leave it because they figure they're going to, instead of rebuilding it or destroying it, we'll just leave it, and we'll probably get the island back, and they do. And then when they leave, they don't tear it down again. So the barracks is unique. It sort of survives the entire war into the French period, which you can see by the red box at the bottom, which they incorporate into their big fortress ultimate solution. The types of cannon, they varied depending on which units were there. So they had, the ones with the big wheels, which are more like for, campaigning on, on campaign in the battlefield with big wheels that get pulled around. The other ones are more garrison with the small wheels. The garrison carriages, meaning ones that, same cannons, but they're mounted differently because they're not going anywhere. They're inside of a fort. So both types were there, depending on who owned it and which time. We know the last cannons left in 1782 when the American Army, after Yorktown, decided we're going to take, we're going to remove all the cannon out of Butts Hill and move them down south. That's probably the last time there was active cannon battery there. But that all existed. And then on one other slide on this subject, the LiDAR, the light penetrating direction radar.
Yep.
This is just a pure LiDAR. So that is, if you took every stitch of trees and grass and everything off of the entire hilltop right now, that's what you'd see. The circle to the left is the giant white water tower, the town water tower. These corner-looking things at the bottom, along the bottom side of the left image, those are just the parking lots at the high school. The rectangle in the middle is the rectangle for the wind turbine parking lot. The rest of it is exactly what's there right now. So people, it's kind of funny. It's a big. The earthworks themselves are like 30-foot slopes. They're big. They're there. When we first started, we had to try to verify this outline. What's here, what's not here. Well, if you take the LiDAR, which is modern, and go right onto the French map of 1780. Period, you can see that it's what we have on our hands is definitely the last model French thing. The gate's in the same place. What I mean? They might not have finished it before they left to Yorktown, but they certainly were almost there. So that's what we're up to.
Interesting. Mark, do you have a question?
Well, was there anything else on General Lafayette in terms of his role?
Well, Lafayette was there twice. He 2 bites of the apple. He was there for the battle. And that whole campaign as one of the commanders, one of the junior commanders. He was supposed to be the left wing commander, but he left to go to Boston. He comes back when the French re-land in 1780. And that's when he, as part of Rochambeau now, the French have Aquidneck Island. He is, very important. He's obviously the go-between between Washington and Rochambeau, but he's also giving orders. So he's up, he goes up to the north end he rides through Portsmouth and all the defenses. And he's the one that actually orders, like I said, a proper fort. So he's everywhere in the war. He's very pivotal. He's all over Rhode Island. I think there's a couple articles posted on either Portsmouth History Notes from Gloria or the other ones. It explains how many times. And he comes back 50 years later after the war and lays the cornerstone to the Bunker Hill Monument and visits all, 18 states or whatever there are at the time as an older man. So Lafayette is a very interesting cat, but he spent a lot of time on the island. And we find that he is, as far as Butts Hill Fort, he absolutely knows where it is. He spent some time there, and he is, whether it was back of envelope or not, he's the one that gave the orders to make 2 forts to 1. So it's the Lafayette tie-in.
Yeah, that's great. Can you also talk about the actual restoration effort itself? I know you folks have made tremendous progress, and there's another phase in the works.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. We'll get to that. So that kind of ties up what exactly was the fort and why it's there. After the war, this gets to restoration. This is a Jim Garman provided 1907 postcard from Portsmouth looking up the hill at Butts Hill. So the gray line across the top of that hill is Butts Hill Fort. It's the mounds. You're looking up past stone walls. It looks like Ireland almost, to a farmhouse on the right. And the rest of it is just Butts Hill Fort and what it looked like 120 years ago. So this is important for 2 reasons. One, that's right about when they decided they were going to plot it for land. Plot the land for houses. It was supposed to be 200 houses put in. Roderick Terry, Newport Historic Preservation of the day, bought the entire hilltop, which is where the high school and the fort now are, to preserve it, to teach future generations about the history of Portsmouth, basically, I'm paraphrasing, for all time. So no commercial endeavors, no houses. We're going to buy the thing. Also bought Fort Barton across the other side of Howlands Ferry and preserved that forever in 1923. So it was a very big deal. So wonderful idea. That's why the high school is there. That's why we have a fort. That entire hilltop was preserved. One of the early preservation efforts on the island. Unfortunately, I'm going to fast forward and cut a few steps. Between the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then after the high school was built in the 60s and 70s, the hilltop goes from being kind of a backwoods. It turns up, it starts getting growth on it and vegetation, turns from being cow pasture, which is what it was for 100 years, kind of like cow grazing area and stuff, and ends up being sort of a a backwoods kind of neglected area, a no-go area. Everyone who's gone to the high school in Portsmouth knows that was the place to go after school and get in fistfights and drink beer and do bad behaviors, which is another reason why it was almost off limits. And people would park there, dirt bike, do all kinds of things. So over the course of decades and decades of actual wanton neglect, basically, the fort ends up in 2021 looking like this next slide, which is slide 8. It's a collage, just to keep the number of slides down. But as you can see on the right, it's a tangled mess of invasives, it's vines, it's really, it's not just underbrush and trees, because you can't, there's no brush clearing fires or anything like that allowed. So it just becomes a backwater full of trash, garbage, just badness. The entire parade field gets pulled in. This to the left is an overhead photograph of the first clearing that Butts Hill Fort Committee did, and that was a picture from an overhead that basically said, here's what we're trying to do to tell the town. You can't see it, but there's yellow highlight basically saying we're going to start cutting our way out of this hole in the middle of the fort and work outwards. So that was the initial efforts in the first couple of years, was to just get a bunch of folks, and we had plenty of help. There was a lot of local, folks that would show up to help. We had the Fort Adams guys had some good equipment to do like stump grinding and things, because anything we cleared out of Butts Hill Fort, the town Department of Public Works will mow whatever's left. But whether the donut is this big or the entire fort, and I'm talking not the earthworks, but the inner part is on their job jar to do. So they're very interested in how far we're going and whether we're going to cut down trees and that kind of stuff. But we went after this over and over again, all the way till the end of 2022, and we cleared quite a bit. We went all the way up to the earthworks on all sides, proved that we knew what we were doing. We couldn't get to the earthwork. We couldn't actually work on the earthworks because they're all historically sensitive. They are archaeologically sensitive and historically sensitive. So the State Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission has to say, yes, you can do something physically to the earthworks or the ditches that surround it. And we're talking, thousands of feet of ditch and earthwork. Excuse me. So after going through, and here's next slide is a picture of a typical day where we go through and we're cutting things down, clippers, weed whackers, that kind of thing, putting them in dumpsters because a lot of it's refuse and trash. So 30 cubic yard dumpsters, which are the ones that trucks come and drop off and then pick up, a week later. We went through about 15 of those in the course of the last 3 years.
Wow.
Full of stuff. It turns out you can't wood chip vines and other things. They all have to be put into a dumpster. So this isn't for lawn waste, and this isn't for branches and brush. This is all just trash that couldn't be chipped up or something. So that's what we were up against. So in 2023. What we did is approach town council in January 23 with this plan, which was if we can't work on the earthworks yet, what we can do though is go outside the earthworks and work in. So we'll go outside the path. So the surrounding, if you could see it on the dotted lines, is a plan to go outside the earthworks to basically clear paths and then work inwards towards the earthworks. In other words, working in non-sensitive areas. But now, the idea was to isolate the earthworks so now that you can see them from both sides, and then we can have a much better idea of how to, what actually has to be done, how much work, how much it's going to cost, all those things. All those goes into convincing the state and the National Park Service that we're actually going to be working on earthworks now, not just walking up there and hacking things off. So to isolate the earthworks, so we did that. We actually did that progress. You can see there's a before and after on the right side of the screen if it's on the slide. That's the wall, a long 100-yard foot stone wall that's right next to the high school, Portsmouth High School. So you've taken from the turbine looking towards the high school, but that's the wall before and after. And that's a winter picture on the upper one. So it's nothing but trash, bottles, dirt. I mean, it's pretty bad. So but we pulled it off. We did all of that in 2023. We were good to our word. We cleared out, and on this next slide, slide 11, you can see what we started with, and better yet, what we ended with is a cleared area on both sides of the earthwork that in that line in the middle on the bottom right, that is the earthwork. So now we've got, and that's just one segment. So now we've got the earthworks isolated, and we can actually get experts in to say yes, no, maybe. This is for 2024 then, with a generous grant from the Van Buren Charitable Van Buren Foundation Charitable and Buren Charitable Foundation, which also funded a lot of the archaeology that we did in 24 and 25. We had enough money to actually come in with a professional grade, approved by Tree Commission, our town tree commission, tree warden, DPW, town council, and the state to execute what became what we call phase one of a two-phase project. So, good news. So the plan was to, and this isn't the RFP, but this is to make it a scalable project. It broke it up into 14 segments of earthwork, like straightaways, because they're all connected. It's like a big geometric. Cut it into 14 segments, and that way you could price the segments. Like how much can a contractor X do from here to here? How much would you charge? 2 sections, 3 sections, whatever. We were originally just going to do one example section, which is why one of them is in gold. It was going to be just the one near the gate as an example of what we were trying to do. But because we had a combination of volunteer help plus a contract, we thought we could probably go a lot further than we thought we could if we added our own, volunteer muscle and other stuff on days when the big stuff would be there, the equipment. And that's what we did. So we actually ended up with a phase one that actually got the entire southern half of Butts Hill Fort cleared. So now it's actually cleared. This whole southern half was executed. I'll go to the next slide, which is phase one complete. This looks a little rudimentary, but right now, in the summertime, if you walk the earth at Butts Hill, that's what the ground looks like. You can see the paths connect. Any trees that are there by design. They're all arbored and protected. All the deadfall's gone. All the vines and invasives are gone. Everything that needed to be was hydroseeded, because once you clear the earthworks, they need to be stabilized so that they don't, they don't erode. Although that, having worked on the earthworks for 5 years now, they are very heavy duty. It's rock, dirt. It's all pick and shovel put up, but it has lasted this long because it's not eroding. It's not like a dirt mound. It is a very solid piece of, and we want to keep it that way. So we hydroseeded it with special mix of recommended seed and that kind of thing to keep everything that we did in place, and also to keep the invasives from coming back. Because we can't go underneath the ground on sensitive earthworks like you would in your backyard, we're going to have more invasives than we would like, but that's just part of the price of doing business on historic earthworks, to protect the earthworks, because you can't dig anything out. You have to just cut it and then keep killing it. That's what we're doing. So that was phase one. That was what we would call phase one, Mark. I know you mentioned that last time. Next slide shows, this is the after effect. So this is the same, if you remember all those before and afters from a few slides ago, this is 2025. So when the snow melts in the spring, if you go up to Butts Hill Fort, this is what you can walk along, this green space.
That's amazing.
It is.
It came out great, didn't it?
Yeah,
and that's
it really
after
did.
the, grass did come up. We had winter wheat and rye. It was a whole mixture of stuff. But it really does. It's very rewarding too. And that's the high school side. So that's the southern end that people can actually see. So now you can see the long stone wall. You can see the fort. We do have some temporary signs up there. Back to our effort, myself, Gloria, a few of us, to just have some kind of signage up there that's just, even though it's temporary, because we can't do permanent signs without permissions or raise the money for it. There are signs up there that kind of give you a hint of what goes on, or what you're looking at. But we want to make it into a real heritage site and put real signage in there. So that's one of our efforts for 26 is going to be to raise money to put in permanent signs, so that when we do get visitors from out of town or from local or school kids, anyone, you'll have a historical marker that'll explain the battle, the barracks, who built it, the French period, all that good stuff. So that's kind of what we're about this year. So we're kind of excited. We're going to try to go on a fundraising drive this year, which we've never done, for just the fort. Retake the hill, I think, is going to be our motto. You heard it here first.
Yeah,
Retake the hill.
That's good.
26.
That's good.
That's what we're going to do for the semi-sesquicentennial. We think we can raise with just we're going to throw a round number like 100,000 or 75,000 even. But like I said, it's scalable. So whatever we can get, there's the earthwork part, which is phase 2, which is what we'd like to do with the rest of it. In other words, and don't forget, this isn't just to make it look nice. It's to preserve the earthwork. Left to its own devices with all the invasives on it, eventually they will rot, destroy, the roots die, everything gets crumbly. It's a way to destroy the earthworks that have never. The reason they lasted for 200 years prior to that is because there was nothing on it. It was grazing land. But now with trees and other things on it, we have to be very careful about what is left, what can grow and what can be allowed to grow. But the good news is, if you leave the right trees up there, and these are all hand-selected trees and they're hand-arbored, it actually comes out to be probably better looking than it ever has as a campus, because now you have nice, pretty birch trees and elm trees and local trees that are, they should be there. They look like they were built to be there, you know, and they're part of a path system, and it all kind of makes sense, you know. And it's a nice green space for that whole area up there. So we've had a great, you know, response from the neighbors that kind of live in that, you know, neighborhood in the surrounding streets up there, you know, in the businesses, because now instead of having a vacant, dirty lot, it's, you know, there's a public park has sprung up in the last, you know, 2 years. So it's kind of cool, very exciting. I'll go one more. There's a little town green, Butts Hill Fort Green, which is on the near the main gate, and hopefully this year we're going to have an Eagle Scout project to come in and replace all these wooden rails, which are the cement posts are there. There was, in the 1923 project, they put a town green in there called Butts Hill Fort Green, lot 72 on the town maps, next to lot 71, which is Butts Hill. The building behind it, which is now Wealth Care Management, which is a huge supporter of what we do, that used to be the Legion Post, and the Legion was supposed to take care of the fort, and the Legion was built in 1939, and they probably did for a lot of years, but they ran out of gas. But that's where this is, but there's projects like that, the fencing, the stone walls, because there's places where the stone walls are not part of the fort, but they're aesthetic walls that have been up there for a long time that have been left to kind of crumble. Those are kind of other projects we're on. So signage, phase 2 big, which is the north end of the fort basically, which is the big money professional grade stuff. And you know, and signage. And then we're going to work with the town. I have one more slide. This is phase 2 final. This kind of shows the campus, what it would look like. Here's the wind turbine is right here in this parking lot. There's a legend right here. And this is posted on supposed to be posted on our website, but it's nothing more than just Butts Hill Fort with paths. It explains what streets are. It doesn't show where the signs are yet, because we don't have signs there on this one, but it shows where you should be able to park. We'd like to make through parking here on, right now there's a roadblock there that's designed to keep traffic out, but we'd like to do that as a final solution. We'll work with the town and state and everybody else to do that. So.
Oh, good.
But those are our goals. That's what we're up to. Meanwhile, events. So starting on Park Day, 25 April this year, 26, we're going to have American Battlefield Trust Park Day, which is our first organized clear up. We're going to be doing that. We'll do some. They'll be in the paper all spring and summer during the growth season. And we end every year with Bert Quist, who was one of our founding fathers, retired Marine Colonel, one each. God bless Bert and his spouse Mary. They have a family also oriented, veteran oriented and Daughters of the American Revolution oriented clearing that we kind of capstone the year with at the end. So we do that every year. We've been doing that for 3 years. It's kind of a nice event. And our musket salute and August 29th battle, we do that every year as well. So those are kind of the known events, but we're planning to put other things on at the fort. So
Sounds great.
that's what goes on.
It's wonderful. All right. Well, I'd like to thank Paul Murphy, Mark Kenny,
Thanks.
and Rhode Island Time Capsule for having us on, and we hope that people have learned some more and would like to get involved.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to have them.
Thank you, Paul.